Okay, so we are going to talk about globalization. I think globalization has been the norm for new generation like you, right? The Gen Z. When you were born, yeah, you have been living in a globalized world. Um, the boundaries among countries have blurred, have dissipated, so to speak. So we'll see the structure of the chapter, right? About globalization, the emergence of global institutions, the drivers, the changing demographics, and so on. There are things that we are going to discuss um, right now. If you have questions or comments, okay, you can stop me anywhere. Don't wait until I finish the whole presentation, because you might forget maybe your specific questions or comments throughout the chapter. So I will begin with the globalization, right? The definition of globalization. Once again, whenever you have questions or comments, just do it, okay? Open your mic and speak up right away. So globalization here, is going for any aspect of your life. You see here, at least you have globalization of markets and also production, like globalization of production. So this refers to, again, the shift toward more integrated, more interdependent, so more dependent world, actually interdependent. So the policy making in one country will affect another country. You see, every country is always waiting for new announcements by the Federal Reserve, by the European Central Bank, because we have to adjust, right? We have to respond to changes in policies everywhere. If the Federal Reserve has increased the interest rate, you can be sure that other parts of the world will do the same thing, right? They will follow suit, because the flow of money, right? The flow of money is going to the most risk adjusted, the highest risk adjusted return places. So whenever a country changes, interest rate, or something is happening to the currency of a country, will be responded, right? Will have to be responded or adjusted by other countries as well. So you see globalization of markets, right? You can imagine maybe the products from your country, you can find it anywhere. Maybe I'll start from Jem. Right? Jem, what do you think? What is the most famous product from your country that you can find anywhere in the world?
I think it's either IKEA or H&M.
IKEA, very famous, right? Almost every country has IKEA, you see, right? Highly globalized. So you could imagine like IKEA, they couldn't just sell in Sweden anymore, right? They have to go everywhere because of, again, the dynamics of the business, right? The world business. Because when you stay in one place, you'll be attacked by your competitors as well. So you have to go out as well, right? Just imagine a soccer game, right? Soccer game, you can't win by just defending, right? Who's the famous player? Ibrahimovic, maybe from your country, right? So you can't just defend your your field. You have to attack. You have to score as well. This, I think, what was happening to the international trade. Globalization of production. You see, we try to take advantage or capitalizing on different places with lower labor costs, right? More available energy, more, again, the land availability, and also capital. Maybe Aleman, any example for this one? Globalization of production. Maybe a company from your country going somewhere to take advantage of whatever, lower labor costs or abundant land somewhere. Any example?
Yes, so my father works for a company from Mexico called Nemac, which is like an engineering company that produces like parts for various car companies in the world. So they have they're producing parts for European car brands and even Asian car brands. And there's actually been an influx of Hangul and Korean immigrants to Mexico to help work on on the company there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could imagine that other countries are experiencing the same thing. So wherever you can find the labor, the availability and also cost efficient labor, energy, some other factors of production, then you will go there, right? Quite easy to imagine. Like almost all companies will have to go to China, right, to capitalize on the labor availability, maybe also more efficient production costs, and also the land, right? The availability of land, the abundant land that they have, and other things. Okay. Again, if you have questions or comments, just open your mic and speak up. Okay. Don't need to wait until I finish everything. Then the next one, you see the emergence of global institutions. Some famous institutions, I think you're quite familiar with them. The WTO, the World Trade Organization, is like how to say, it's like policy maker, right? The policing the world trading system. They want to make sure that all countries are having the same level of playing field. Be fair, reducing tariffs and quotas and some protectionist policies that we saw a lot in the past. So nowadays, this kind of protectionism or protectionist activities or policies have been declining, right, to the very low level. But of course, there are still some, tariff quotas and some other policies that we can avoid. It's still there, but at least we could suppress them to, I think, the historically lowest level in these modern times. IMF, a very famous organization like IMF, it will help countries with monetary difficulties because of maybe currency problems, banking crisis or financial crisis. Then they will come to help. And of course, when they help, the country that needs help has to change certain policies. Okay, maybe more open economy, to abandon the protectionist kind of policies. For example, in 1998, there was a relatively big crisis in Asia. Okay, this Asia, Eastern Europe as well. So the IMF had to come to like South Korea, to Thailand, Vietnam, Southeast Asian countries, but they required changes. Right? They required changes in policies. For example, like more open economy, more liberal economy, so to speak. Okay, less protectionist or socialistic economy, less that way, but more liberal, more open economy as the requirement to receive the IMF help. What about World Bank? World Bank is more focused on the economic development, right? Economic development, so they help less developed countries. We call it LDCs, less developed countries. They provide like soft loans that could be repaid in like 50 years or 25 years or 50 years or something like that. United Nations, now they are very busy. I mean, I guess like the Security Council will be very busy. I think these days they'll have meetings every day. But United Nations, you see the main purposes there: maintaining international peace and security, developing friendly relations among nations, cooperating in solving international problems, and being a center for harmonizing the actions. It's not always easy, right? The United Nations, the task. We should be grateful that after the Second World War, I think the United Nations still exists, still stands as it is right now. I mean, without United Nations, I think the world will be more chaotic. Even with its existence, we know that the dynamics of the world is not always easy. You see what's happening today. Not always easy, but at least with the United Nations, we have the coordinator. We still have a coordinating body that will garner support from its members, right, the member states, and if a certain country is doing some crazy things, at least other countries will be more united under the United Nations to complain against it or to do something with it. G20, are you familiar with this one? G20, they are comprised of 19 largest economies and some representatives from the EU and ECB. So essentially like top 20 or top 19 countries. So what's the meaning of largest economies here? Largest GDPs, okay? Largest GDPs, not GDPs per capita. So we're not talking about GDP per capita, but the GDP. So the first would be right now, as it is today, as of today, still the United States. Now the second is China. The third is Japan, and so on, right? Germany and so forth. So this is the largest GDPs, right? Not GDP per capita. If we are talking about GDP per capita, I think the largest would be maybe Switzerland or Luxembourg or some countries like that. But we are talking about GDP in total, okay? So the largest would be the US, the second would be China. So other organizations that I think you know, like regional organizations, maybe free trade agreements in North America, like Aleman, maybe you have the NAFTA, North America Free Trade Agreement, right? In China with other countries, they have the Asian Free Trade Agreements and so on. So we have so many other organizations. Any questions or comments about the organizations? Okay, no questions. Drivers, the next one, drivers of globalization. Yeah, this is quite easy to imagine. What's the first one? The decline in barriers to the free flow of goods, services, and capital. And the second one is the famous one, right? Technological change or technological changes. Let's see the first one, okay? Any opinion from your side, maybe? Or examples? What do you see here? Decline in like the barriers to the flows of products, you know, capital, and also human resources, right? Could flow
Maybe,
anywhere.
I think the
Yeah,
biggest
Mathilde?
okay,
Maybe let me take Mathilde first, okay?
okay, so I want to say that actually thanks to the decline in barriers, all exchange are so easy right now. I mean, for example, we can have in France some product from other countries so easily because there aren't any barriers. And so all boundaries aren't really here. And thanks to that, we can exchange, we can share also, and discover also other culture, other product, other way to manage, to do business, etc.
Right. So I think that's the pleasant part of globalization, right? You could find anything there. In Paris, you could find Samsung, right? Mercedes anywhere very easily, right? Can find even very specific products from far countries you could find in your own country. That's the beautiful thing. Also, human resources, you could get talents everywhere. I could get Yun-sung.
Yes.
Are you Korean?
Yes, I'm Korean.
You're Korean. So you could go to wherever, to Belgium. You could go to the United States. I remember my classmate for my master's program. My classmate, a Korean, so he was working for Samsung, but he was stationed everywhere in the world, you know, in Belgium, in Germany, and somewhere else. So it's very easy to see the flows, like everything, the products, the capital, the people. That's, I think, the beautiful thing about globalization. Yun-sung, maybe I'll go to you. The second one, maybe, technological changes. What do you see here?
I was going to talk about how the European Union has a very perk answering the first question.
Okay.
To think of the second question, the technological change, I haven't thought about that yet.
Okay. Maybe you can do the first one. You can continue with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of the European Union, I was trying to think of the flip side where the the reiteration of the Brexit kind of forced new barriers in terms of fishing, in terms of agricultural transportations or whatnot, I thought that was another flip side example of how there are new barriers with the inclination of another macro factor that could sum into how globalization can backfire.
That's right. That's right. I think that's true. So we also see the fact that the globalization might happen as well in certain parts of the world. For example, the case of Brexit. Yeah, that has created a new barrier. That's true. And also, even if you go to like the States, certain groups of people don't really like globalization. You know, like they demonstrated in the past. They would do some sorts of complaint. So every country has this kind of debate, you know, like globalization or the globalization, especially if your national interests are at stake, right? Something like that, right? So yeah, that's I think quite natural. I think everywhere it will happen all the time. Thank you, Yansu. The second one, technological changes. Anyone want to give comments? Tom.
Okay,
Tom
can
Chengjia.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe in the past time that people they need to ride their horse and they go to other countries, they need to take a lot of time. And maybe if they want to deliver some meat and the meat will bad and not fresh anymore. But nowadays we have the flight and some even a ship and some countries, if they want to output their meat to other countries, they can use the flight and it will reduce the time and to make the quality of the product higher. Yeah, that's my idea.
Thank you, Tom. Look at us right now. Well, we are everywhere in the world. Right?
Yes.
I'm not sure. You are in China or you are in Korea? Or...
I'm in Korea. Yeah.
You are in Korea right
South
now?
Korea.
You're in South Korea. Yeah. I mean, the others you might be somewhere else. I'm in the States, so yeah, it's very easy by Zoom, you know, to see what was happening right now.
Zoom is also a symbolize of the technological change.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. See, we could do this kind of class by Zoom. You know, this is really amazing, right? Something that we couldn't imagine like 5 years ago or a decade ago, right? So nice. Yeah. And also the communication technology and also the internet is faster. You have 5G. You have unimaginable. Like I could tell you, you know, I when the first time I had my mobile phone, I was using the GPRS. You know, GPRS very slow, crazy, unimaginable today. Yeah. Now we have 5G, and we're still complaining, you know, with the super fast connection, you know.
Yes.
And we're still complaining. We are complaining because we want to be faster. But I could imagine like 20 years ago, you only had the 3G or 2G and nobody complained, you know. We were grateful enough like 20 years ago to have the internet. Yeah, human nature, right? Human nature. Yeah. Human nature. Yeah, communication and also information processing. Imagine this one, the chips. Chips have become like super fast with the i9, i7, i9, the M1 right, by Apple and so on. Snapdragon and all other, you know, information processing things. Transportation as well, like what you say, Tom, right? The airplanes, airlines everywhere. And from China, you could go to, I don't know, to Finland in like 8 hours maybe. About that, maybe 8 or 9 hours.
Yes, around 8 hours.
Yeah, so easy, right? See?
Can I add something?
Yes, Chem, please.
I have like with help of technology now, people can like invest capital anywhere in the world through the computers. So I think the flow of capital is like so easy to go anywhere.
That's right, Chem. Sending money or investing, you can just use the app everywhere. I don't know, you want to trade the cryptocurrencies, you can use the Gemini app. If you want to invest in US stock, you just get the Robinhood app or something. It's very easy. Or in your country, like in Sweden, maybe I just need to download certain app. I could trade in the stock market in Finland and somewhere, something like that. And sending money, the wire system is super fast right now, with the SWIFT, with the MoneyGrams and something like that. Yeah, thank you, Tom, Chem. We'll continue a bit. Yeah, declining trade and investment barrier. This is quite obvious, like what you just mentioned and explained as well. You could imagine like in 20s and 30s, we had like thick barriers among countries, like 20s and 30s, dangerous times, close to the Second World War. So it was a difficult time. Barriers were everywhere. However, you see, like this kind of tariffs and quotas and other protectionist policies have declined to the lowest levels, because this is very interesting point here. The second point here, we don't do it because of course we have interest. We gain benefits from lowering the protectionist policies, but also this one. Look at this phrase, okay? Beggar thy neighbor. It's like you try to revenge, right? If another country is doing something to you, you try to revenge by enacting the same policy on that country. So, for example, you have your product, right? Let's say here, I'll give an example. Maybe Wu Peiqing. You are from China, or where are you from?
I'm from Taiwan.
You're from Taiwan, okay? See, a similar name. Sorry for that. You're from, yeah, you're from Taiwan, and you have the Asus, right? Something like that, right? You export, and maybe one particular country is levying high tariff on your products. Then you will do the same thing, right? You revenge, right? I think that also creates the more more considerate policies among countries, because you know that if you do something to another country, most likely that country will do the same thing to you because of this kind of principle, retaliatory policies, so to speak, right? The revenging policy, beggar thy neighbor, right? Also, yeah, after the Second World War, the barriers have declined with this kind of organizations. They try to maintain the level of playing field, the fairness and something like that, right? And I don't know, the average tariff. If you see the statistics in the next slide, see the time series from 1350s, 90s, and around 2018. You see, all countries are showing declining, tariff. Right? This is, I think, the norm in the world. Has been quite low. See, surprisingly, the high tariff is levied by the United States, 3%, and they are the advocate of the international trade. Right? So quite interesting, but at least it's very low nowadays, between like 2 to 3%. Okay, barriers. And this is another interesting statistics here. If you notice, the red line is the GDP, right, from 1960 to 2019, and it has increased by, I don't know, I think ninefold, okay, 9 times, 9.4 times. But look at this one, international trade has increased by 22 times. Right, so more aggressive growth, the international trade. See the blue line here. So it's more more significant, more aggressive growth in the international trade than the GDPs of the countries. Wu, maybe you have any example for this one? What do you think? Any opinion about the GDP and international trade that show that the international trade actually grew faster at multiple times more than the GDP did?
Yeah, I think since it's getting more globalized nowadays, and so the GDP is like growing super fast.
Right. So what about that? Yeah, but from your country's perspective, you see this one, right? The firms are more, they're producing more everywhere. They find like different locations because you could get, again, the labor, maybe the land, right? The energy, the capital, the human resources, and so on. and the second one is what is that they have become more, interconnected, like more intertwined and increasingly dependent on each other. What do you think from the perspective of Taiwan? You think this is happening also between Taiwan and other countries? Can you give examples? That was a close relationship, maybe in trade between Taiwan and another country. Any observation? What's
I think in
trading partner?
Taiwan, yeah, I think in Taiwan because some of the pressure, so we don't have many partner countries, but some company will seek to go abroad to open factories and find the places to operate and set up their own factory over there.
Right, maybe Vietnam or Indonesia or some places like that, right? With great number of people, market size is good. You have human resources there. You could produce many things there. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Also, the third point here, you see the trade is the engine, right? The growth engine of the modern times, right? For the last 2 decades at least. And also, this is an interesting point. I think we talked about this earlier, that you're finding that your home markets are also prone to attack, right? You are prone to attack as well by your competitors. That's why you also have to go out and attack, right? Like maybe just imagine the football game, the soccer game or the football game. You need to defend, but you also need to attack. Otherwise, by defending, then somehow at one point you will collapse because your competitors keep attacking your home base, right? Your home market. So you have to go out as well to find like new markets, find market size everywhere. Also new talents everywhere. But you don't want to lose talents, because once you get talents, you could develop the technology. You have the better thoughts, of strategies and some other things. Any comments about this part? Now we are back to the technological changes, right? The second point that we saw before, technological change, microprocessor. This is very important one. And the funny thing in the world right now, we are running out of chips because of the pandemic and some other things. Do you notice that? So I don't know, like in the United States, we are running out of like new cars, very difficult to get new cars. The price is going up because of the limited availability of chips. Also video games. If you notice, right, PS5, very hard to find. I think it's easier to find the Nintendo Switch, but the PS5 is really difficult to find. And if you could find it, you have to pay quite a lot, right? Because we are running out of chips. I don't know what's happening to the chip makers, but maybe because of the pandemic or other reasons. But the microprocessor has been very fast, by the strong processors everywhere for mobile phones, for your tablets, for your laptops, for everything. Like good chips everywhere. Competitors are everywhere. I think in the past, when I was at your age, we only had like Intel and AMD, right? The competing firms like Intel and I don't remember at the time they had Celeron, some old names, okay? Now they have i3, i5, i7, i9. The AMD has Ryzen, right? And now we have other competitors. Apple is making like, I don't know, M1 or X1, some names like that, like the faster iPhone 13 or the new iPad, like the MacBook and something like that. And then Snapdragon and some other names. So microprocessor has been really crucial in the world development. Also, internet. Oh, this is interesting one. 94. So you were born in, I guess, 2000 maybe, 2001. Most of you maybe, right? 2000 or 2001, or maybe later than that, maybe 2003 or something. But I remember the first time I had the internet connection. That was in '95. Okay, '95. I made my first email in '95. You know the cost of internet cafe at that time. You will be surprised. Okay, it's about $10 an hour in '95. Can you imagine that? $10 an hour by the internet cafe in 1995. And I created my first email. But can you imagine who would send me emails, in 1995? Anyone? Anyone would send me email in 1995? Nobody, right? Not many. I was in a junior high at that time, and we had the internet, but we didn't really know what to do with it, in 1995. Websites were limited. So obviously we don't have this kind of like CNBC or Bloomberg or anything. We only had Yahoo, I remember. Yahoo, and then MSN, the old websites that had existing for a long, long time. But we don't have nice websites like what we do today. So it's quite an old world. On 95, it was not too long ago, right? 95 is like, how many years ago is that? 30 years ago? 27 years ago? Right? It's relatively new, right? It's not like 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Only 27 years ago, and the world was very different at that time. So with the internet, everything, changes quickly, like your learning as well. Like in the past, like in 1999, I went to college in 1999, okay? The professors were teaching in the class. Of course, we had textbooks, but limited, right? Limited textbooks. Everything was quite limited at the time. We didn't know anything beyond what the professor said, But nowadays, you are in this class, but you have all kinds of sources. You could go to Google, YouTube, any kind of sources, Coursera, online courses and other things. So you have a lot of like sources of information, stronger body of knowledge because of this kind of technology, or the internet technology has made it possible. Commercial jet travel, right? You can imagine, we talked about this before. You could fly from Korea to Europe in maybe 9 hours, Korea to the United States for maybe 15 hours only. Relatively quick. 15 hours, of course, it's not pleasant to be flying for 15 hours, but it's not that bad, like 15 hours. It's not like 2 days or 3 days or something. 15 hours and you will be in Chicago. Very nice. A container as well, the ability to have cargoes, containers and everything. So really help our world at technological changes here. Any questions or comments? Maybe I will give an opportunity for who else here? Julal, maybe? Julal, any example from you, from what you're observing in your country, maybe? Julal, are you there? Amelia, maybe? Amelia Ward.
Like an example of the role of technological change.
Right. What you observe maybe surrounding you or in your country?
I would say in the States, kind of like the boom of Zoom with COVID. Since I go to Elon's like a private school, so we have like kids all over the States. So like the people in California are on a different time zone. And when we got sent back to COVID, the only reason, or like when we got sent home because of COVID, when it first started, the only reason that some kids were able to really do classes when we're from almost all 50 states was because of Zoom, and like how without this type of technology, certain things wouldn't be possible. That makes sense?
Right, that's right. I think so, yeah. It depends on the states. Like in my state, like I have been teaching in person since last semester. No mask mandate, nothing here. So it depends on the place, but you're right. The use of Zoom has been quite amazing. You know, like it helps a lot. So we could save the time as well. I mean, I remember the first semester we went back to the university, we had to limit, you know, quite inconvenient because we had to limit the capacity of the class to 50%. So half of the class would study from anywhere by Zoom, and half would come to the class. So I was thinking that it's not really efficient, you know, like what's the meaning, right? It's better to use like the whole Zoom or all in person. But at least with the Zoom, we have the opportunity to, you know, work from everywhere, to study from everywhere as well. Yeah, thank you, Emilia. Okay, what else? The implications for production. I think we discussed it a lot here. You could produce everywhere with the technology. You can go, you know, everywhere. The cargo, you could fly your own cargo planes everywhere. You know, you could produce and send them everywhere as well. And also globalization of markets, not only the products but also the people. I remember I had a business partner in the past, you know, my colleague from Japan. So he would fly, for example, you know, from Tokyo to another country in Asia, let's say to Jakarta. Okay, Jakarta is like 7 hours from Tokyo, so he would fly at night, right? And he would arrive in Jakarta in the morning, and he would attend a meeting, you know, yeah, just, you know, wash his face, take a quick shower, and then attended meetings. And he would return to Tokyo the night, you know, at night. So it's just like sleeping, you know, 2 consecutive nights in the airplane. That's very possible because it's only 7 hours. Okay, something like that, right? Quite enabling for this kind of, you know, international trade, not only for the products but also for the people. So we could send the talents everywhere. We could recruit talents everywhere as well, and you can go back and forth everywhere in the world, especially in the same region. It would be quite quite enabling, you know, quite good for the international trade. Globalization of markets, once again, this is about everything: the communication, the migration of people, like the flow of people. And if you think about it, we have more and more certifications in the same region. I'm not sure whether it happens in East Asia between or among China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, some countries nearby. It has become a norm. Like if you have like professional certifications, like accountant or lawyer, you will have it for the whole region. That being the case, if you graduate from Korea, you can be an accountant somewhere else. I'm not sure that's happening already in East Asia, but in other parts of the world, we find that that's the trend. Okay, the trend toward that way. I'm not sure in Europe, in North Europe, do you have that kind of system? No, the same certifications for accountants, lawyers, consultants. Can you do it in North Europe, maybe?
I think at school when they teach accounting, they always teach like the international accounting something, the standards.
But do you have? But can you work, for example, in like Finland or Denmark with your accounting accounting certification from Sweden?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's I think the trend in many places. So if you have like the CPA from one country, you could work, or you can open your accounting firm in the other countries of the same region, right? That's the trend, and that will happen everywhere in the world with more globalized world, right? So the movement of people, the standardization of education, professional designations, professional and also academic degrees, right? More recognizable everywhere in the world. I think this helps the movement of people as well. And global communications, we talked about this. Okay? So let's see the changing demographics now. Changing demographics. You see, a half century ago, the US dominance was so high. And I think you could imagine, you could understand why. Because after the Second World War, the US was the only, the only winner of the war that was not destroyed by the war. But, like after the Second World War, there were like the Allied countries. There were 5 countries that essentially won the war. The United States, the UK, then France, Soviet Union, and China. But the previous version of China. But among the 5, you could imagine, right? The European countries, they were destroyed by the war because of the Nazi, packing back and forth. China was in war with Japan, right? So the United States was the only winner that was not destroyed by the war. They dominated the economy for maybe the first 25 years, like from 45 to maybe 60s or early 70s, before like new competitors from Europe and Japan, came to existence, right, in 1960s, end 60s or beginning 70s. Also, they dominated the world foreign direct investment, the FDI. Also, large corporations. I think you still see the big corporations from the United States everywhere in the world. General Motors, General Electric. What else? Accounting firms, Ernst and Young. Some top names in the world, right, from the United States. So they're still dominant, but not as dominant as they were, let's say, half a century ago. And half the globe, you see here, this quite interesting one. Centrally planned economies, in other words, socialistic economies, socialism was off limits, right? So at the time, there was no competition in terms of the economy from the socialistic economies or countries. But nowadays, this kind of boundaries have been very, how to say, like blurred. It's not really clear anymore. Even China, I mean, you can say, some of you are from China here. You can imagine, like, in terms of politics, you're still a communist country, but in the economy, you're quite open, right? That's what I understand. The economy is quite open. The politics is still, communist, right? So it's very hard to find purely socialistic or communistic economies in the world right now. Even Vietnam, the same thing, right? Vietnam, communist country, but economically open. It's quite open for their economy. So I would say, what countries that remain socialistic in their economies? Not many. Maybe North Korea, I guess, right? And some other remote countries. But most of the countries are open, right, in terms of with respect to their economies. Even China, right, the biggest example, open economy, but politically they still maintain the communist system. So it's very hard to find this kind of dichotomy anymore. This kind of dichotomy between the capitalistic and communistic system in the world. Right? The boundary of the difference has been not clear, or has been quite blurred recently. And if you see the statistics here, the changing world output here, shares of the world output in 1960s and today, you see here the US declining in proportion, almost many developed countries are declining in terms of their shares of world outputs. But what about here? Japan has increased, and China, of course, significantly increased. And even in the 1960s, we didn't have any statistics on China. We didn't know what happened in 1960s in China. But nowadays, the share of Chinese world output has been like 15%, and quite significant in the world. So it's like Japan, China, South Korea, you can imagine. So they have larger shares or proportions of world outputs today. What about the exports? China is quite big, right? Relatively big today with 11%. United States is still is trailing a bit at 8.2, but you see the what's that, the playing field has been quite flat, you know, like no dominating countries like they were in the past, you know? More extreme in the past. They were dominated by developed countries, but nowadays it has been more equal, right? More balanced in the world's output and exports. See the names here. Some new economies. Japan is not really new economy. It has been there for a long time. South Korea as well. Thailand, Malaysia, including Taiwan, Brazil, like Indonesia, and some other economies are catching up. See the statistics here. Developing nations, okay, would account for about 60% of the world economic activity by 2030. So it's about a decade from now. So they would account for like 60%. Today's rich nations are accounting for 55% of the world economic activity. So today, right, about 2020 or 2022 right now, the developed nations are still, you know, dominating by 55% of the world economic activity. But 10 years from now or a decade from now, they would be around 38%. So they're still increasing, but their proportion or their shares are declining, right? So there's a shift to be more equal world, you know, more globalized in terms of the equality and also the movement of people. So you see, like economic geography has been more equal. That's, I think, the good thing. So we are happy with that, to create, you know, more equal world, more balance, and also safer world. Right? You understand what I'm saying, right? If you see your neighbors, right, your adjacent neighbors or your far neighbors, if they're prospering, it's safer also for you. So the world will be safer, right? Will be more peaceful because more and more people are prospering. It's very important, right, to be, you know, prospering together. Yeah, of course, we still have some you know, rewards. Right? If you are more creative, you are more innovative, you are more in the sense that you could create creative centers, you could recruit better talents, you have more tolerance. You know, like in the creativity world, we have the 3 T's. We call it 3 T's. The first T is tolerance. You know, a place with higher tolerance will be more likely to be a creative center. Why? Because tolerance will attract talents. Right, the second T, right, talent. And the third T is technology. Right, this is, you know, quite making sense because a place with better tolerance will attract more talents. Better talents will develop technologies. Right, the 3 T's. Right, that's why you see top talents today are still highly attracted to the United States. You see what's happening? Elon Musk, where is he from? From South Africa. Right? You know, the two top CEOs, right? Two top companies of the US are presided over by Indian, right? Microsoft, Google, you know, they were born in India, right? Those CEOs, the Satya Nadella and what's the name again? The Google, Sundar Pichai or something. Yeah, they were born in India. Right? Of course, they are now US citizens. But you see, this kind of place have become like creative centers. Why? Because it's very attractive to grab talents from all over the world because it has high tolerance. So tolerance, talents, and technologies always, you know, come together or hands in hand. Foreign direct investment, in the past, like the United States dominated everything, but nowadays you see the investment flows have been more equal everywhere. Both, you know, inflows and also outflows. Let's see the statistics here. FDI outward stock, meaning that the amount of, here, right? The cumulative value of foreign investments, right? Domiciled in one nation to another country. So essentially, your foreign direct investment to another country or to other countries as a percentage of GDP. You see maybe in the United States, you see the pattern here, 95, 2005, and 2018. Okay, and what about the other countries? Right, in 2018, right, increasing more and more. Right, so the foreign direct investment as a percentage of GDP has been increasing in many other countries as well. So not dominated by the United States or the United Kingdom anymore, or by the European countries anymore, but everywhere, right? In Japan, China, Korea, also other countries like Australia and other countries. So it's more equal nowadays. And the summary statistics here, 12% to 35%. The FDI outward stock as a percentage of GDP has increased from 12% in 95 to 35% in 2018. So it will keep increasing. We suppose, right? They will keep increasing in many parts of the world. So you receive foreign direct investments, but you also go out. You also go to other countries to make foreign direct investments. Any questions or comments about the changing world outputs and also foreign direct investment? And if you see this quickly, developing countries in green and developed countries in red, you see the proportion from like 1990s, the red was so dominant, right? The developed countries were so dominant in with respect to the FDI. But look at maybe the last decade, okay? The green has been more and more significant, right? So of course the red is still larger in terms of FDI, but the green is playing catch up, right? Not too far, not like it was 20, 30 years ago. So what about changing nature of multinational corporations? You see, like in 2003, the world's top 2,000 multinational corporations, 38, so almost 40% of the 2,000 top corporations in 2003 were US companies, but nowadays, what is it? Only 30%, right? In 2020, about 2019, the top corporations from the US was only 29%, or let's say 30%. So other countries, other corporations from many other countries have now caught up a bit. Right? From Taiwan, you have some famous companies. India, you have famous products as well, famous companies as well. And South Korea, of course, you have the Samsung, LG. What other brands from Korea? The famous brands? Cars, maybe?
There's Hyundai and Kia.
Hyundai, Kia, you see? Many other famous brands, I guess, from Korea, and also other countries. And the growth of mini multinationals, smaller countries like startup firms, but they serve internationally, okay, has become more and more, pervasive everywhere. For example, I think the famous in Southeast Asia, this company was just listed on NASDAQ maybe several months ago. The name is Grab, Grab, okay? Grab is, I think, quite similar to Uber. They have the Uber Eat or something. The Grab also has the Grab Eat or something. So the company was, I think, headquartered in Singapore, and it served a small startup firm in the beginning, but it quickly served like surrounding nations like Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, maybe Vietnam as well. I'm not sure in countries beyond that boundary, but they quickly became highly big because the market size of Southeast Asia is 600 million people, right? 600 million people, that's big market size, right? So small firm, but they quickly went everywhere in the region, and then there was just listed on Nasdaq, I guess, Nasdaq or New York Stock Exchange or Nasdaq, between the two, and they did it via SPAC, SPAC, so Special Purpose Acquisition Company. They're called SPAC. So they did the initial public offering by SPAC. So this kind of mini multinationals have been, I think, more and more common. I guess in China, you see a lot of startups, right? Startup firms, small scale, but they become really big quickly, right? Or maybe that one, the Alibaba, I think it was a startup firm before.
Yes, absolutely. Alibaba used to be a small platform, but nowadays he's one of the biggest.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know.
Right?
Maybe the market in China is so big that they can
right.
get a lot of profit. Also, Chinese government have established some regulations. They don't let the Amazon or other foreign platform to go into China, so Alibaba can get a large market share. So that's why they become a larger and larger.
Yeah, quite interesting, Tom. I hope someday you build your own startup. You have big market. 1.5 billion. Yeah, 1.5 billion people. The cake is big, right? The pie is big. Crazy. Alibaba, Attention, maybe it was small company before. So crazy. Now, mini multinational, so they get big quickly, because of the technology and the market size as well. Quite interesting. What else here? The changing world order. I think this might be beyond my specialty, because this is more toward the political arena. I don't claim to know everything, but we can notice, right, the changing world order. In the past, we had the superpowers like the United States and the Soviet Union. Now Soviet Union is no more, but we still have one of the strong member countries from the Soviet Union, which is Russia. And this day, Russia is making a lot of noise. But now the second superpower is China, right? The United States, China, European Union, of course, as always, they're strong. Because in the Union, like European Union, let's say, members still resemble the old-time Roman Empire, right? Still similar, the member countries. So European Union is there. You have China, that superpower, another superpower. Russia is still powerful. So world order keeps changing, right? Every maybe generation. But of course, this is something natural. We want to be more powerful from time to time, militarily, also economically, politically as well. But so we have to keep observing what is happening to the world. That's very important, because if you're a business person, when you want to go somewhere, you have to adapt, right? You have to adapt. If you are a Chinese company like Tom, or who was it again? Lily, I think. Lily, are you from China?
No, I'm not. I just lived in China for about 3 or 4 years.
Where are you from?
I'm from Korea. I lived in Southern California, and I moved into Rushi, which is right below Shanghai, I guess. And I came back to Korea.
Okay, you are from the US then, from California. Suppose you're from you were born in the United States, you go to China, then you have to adapt. No?
No, I was like,
sorry?
Yeah, I was born in Korea and I had to move with my parents to US for a while. Yeah.
Sorry. So you're Korean.
It's fine.
Yeah. So you're Korean. When you go to the United States, you adapt, right? You have more. Yeah, you have more flexibility in the US in terms of business, right? You do business there. You have more flexible style of doing business, but more complaining customers though. Customers are more complaining, more complaining in the US, right? So they'll complain a lot. But you have to adapt, right? So you have more demanding customers, but you can you have more freedom of speech,
Yeah.
But when you move to of course, when you move to China, what's happening? Then you have to adapt again.
I had to make adjustments, but it's true that being multinational brings in a lot of intricacies. Yeah, that's true.
Right. That's right. Always. I mean, when you're in China, when you do business, you have to be like maybe more, how to speak, like the freedom of speech is not that high. So
not there anymore.
You don't talk that much about politics. You just make money there. Right. Yeah. You keep making money there, but a bit silent about. Right. Yeah. You can imagine. Everywhere you go, you adapt. You modify your style. That's, I think, the something that we have to do all the time as international business person, international executive. So we adapt, right? That's something that we have to do always. But world order is now less. How to say, like more and more covert, okay, more abstract, because it's hard to say. Like it's not like in the past we knew for sure that that was a communist country, that was a socialist country, this is a capitalistic country. Like something that in the past was clear, but nowadays it's hard to say. Like everything is like a melting pot of everything, right? A combination, the politics, the economy, right? Like if you go like countries like, again, China or Vietnam, you do business freely there, as long as you don't mess up with the political arena, something like that, right? You understand what I'm saying? Similarly, even if you go to a country like Singapore, we don't say that Singapore is a socialist country. We don't say it that way. But again, Singapore is typical Asian country. Like if you go there, they expect you not to do the political things. So you don't jump into the like political arena or political conversation too much. But if you do business, they will just let you do business. It's quite free then. You understand what I'm saying? So quite similar, the characteristics of the Southeast Asian, countries. Also in China, Korea, I guess, is more free. Japan maybe more free, like more freedom of speech there. But of course, you don't expect this kind of like freedom like in the United States or in Canada or somewhere like that. Right? So you adjust, we adjust. So we, as an international business person or international executive, you observe, you change, you modify, you adapt. Global economy in the 21st, current trends. So the world is moving toward, what is it? Economic system that's more favorable to international trade and business. This is so true. Every country is opening. Remember, we have, every country has its own interest, right? National interest. They want to open up because they will gain the benefits as well. So they could export everywhere. They could import quality products. They could learn from it. They learn the technologies. They're preparing for the next generation technologies as well. For example, even in China, you see, it has been, I think you have been cooperating with like General Motors for, I don't know, maybe a decade or more. The company name, Shanghai Automotive something with the General Motors, right? So you had a joint venture.
I don't actually know, but maybe.
What was the car name? Baojun or something?
Baojun.
The brand of the car. I don't really know the brands of the car, but they have the joint venture.
Yes, the car manufacturer is named Baojun in China.
Right, yeah. You see, there's a joint venture between General Motors and SI something, right? Shanghai something.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So you are cooperating, like making the joint venture with General Motors, knowing that you could learn the technologies from them, right? And you could create what is that, joint brand that you could sell not only in China, but you could sell it somewhere else, maybe in Southeast Asia, in India or Pakistan or everywhere, right? So you gain the benefit as well. So I think we are more rational nowadays. Okay, setting aside or putting aside the political competitors. You understand what I'm saying, right? Maybe you have a political competitor like the United States or the Western civilization, but you see the benefits of collaboration or cooperation. So you will do it, right? Because we are talking about money, international trade, international business is about money making. So you see, okay, we could collaborate. We like your products as well, like in China. So I suppose you like what, Apple, right? You like MacBook, iPad, or everything. You have your own brands, but you love the quality products from everywhere. You like Volvo, maybe you like MacBook, you like iPad, and you like Cadillac, like Buick or something like that. So yeah, now it's we got money talks, right? Money talks. In business, like money talks. But of course, in politics and everything, stories will be different. But we are talking about the international business. What is that? The widespread adoption of liberal economic policies. This is so true. Almost every country in the world is having this kind of liberal policy, or more and more toward liberal policy, more open economy rather than closed or socialistic, more toward liberal and open economy everywhere. And also, oh, this is very, very interesting point here. Globalization is not inevitable. So now this is interesting, right? Maybe you can call it the globalization, right? The internationalization or the globalization. So again, you see, like some countries may pull back, right, from the union, like what England did, right, with the Brexit. Or again, some groups in certain groups in your country may despise this kind of globalization issue, right? Idea. They don't like it. Why? Because they don't get benefit. They're concerned about maybe local products, local wages, local employment, and everything. So there are many reasons to despise globalization, and this happening as well, right? We don't deny the fact that there are some groups of people who don't like globalization. I don't know in your countries. Maybe you can tell some stories about it. Anyone here? What do you anything you observe from your country? Any kind of movement like this, the globalization? Any one of you maybe want to tell some observations or stories?
Yeah, I guess you're really dependent on other countries sometimes, because for example, in the Netherlands, like 60% of the gas comes from Russia. So like if there are problems with that, then the gas price has a big influence. So that's kind of the tricky part of globalization.
That's right. I think that's something that we need to be concerned about, like Kai. So too, I think with globalization, everything is like connected. The contagion effect is so real. Like what you say, right, Kai? What's happening in Ukraine will affect the oil prices everywhere, right? In Europe, in Asia, in America as well. Yeah, so this, I think, the counter argument, I guess, like counter argument against the globalization, because the contagion effect was so, yeah, sometimes so bad, Yeah, like what we are seeing, the financial crisis, the banking crisis in the US, right, in 2008 to 2010. You see what is happening to other parts of the world? They got the hit as well. Something that didn't happen in 1998. In 1998, there was a big crisis in Asia and Eastern Europe, but the United States was not hit by the crisis because at the time, the world was so segregated. segregated in terms of country boundaries, okay? So it was not that contagious in 1998, but in 2008, the crisis quickly spread to other countries and other parts of the world. That's, I think, the negative side of globalization, right? So contagious. Like this one, right? Crisis contagion. Yeah, financial crisis, especially this one, 2008 to 2010, right? So contagious, that one. And also you just notice the current crisis, current pandemic, it began in what, Wuhan in China. Now suddenly, you know, within several months, the pandemic spread everywhere. Crazy, right? So fast and so drastic also. So drastic, so extreme, you know, like every country was just having the same pandemic with the same variant. Now we are talking about Omicron. Before that, we had Delta, Beta, or some other versions. So other countries will be, would get the contagion effect quickly, right? Any kind of economic policy or health problems as well. Globalization debate, we have costs and benefits, of course. Every policy has cost and benefit, but again, the benefits are clear. More equal world. You can imagine, like in the past, I don't know, like when I was born, when I grew up, when I was in my childhood, I think not every country had good products, like the cars, the automotive, the information technology was not existing. Nothing, like I got my first desktop in 1990s. That was during my junior high. So before junior high, I never had any access to personal computer, right? No desktop, let alone laptop, right? Didn't exist. Laptop didn't exist at the time. So rich people at that time would have access to mainframe. Mainframe is like a big room with a big computer, but only, I think, top corporations had it. Top universities had this kind of mainframe, but other people don't or didn't. But now we have quite equal. In terms of education, you could go everywhere, and the quality of universities have been more and more uniform, right? Of course, there are some top universities, some lower level universities, but differences in quality have dissipated more and more, right? Because of the technology, the availability of internet and something like that, right? So the benefits are quite clear. We have a lot of benefits, but the cost. What about the cost? See this one, the debate. Job, right? The job market. Some groups are complaining, like with globalization, some international firms will come to this country and somehow they would like get some jobs, right? Steal some jobs, so to speak, right? Some jobs will be taken over by the international, and also wages. So in the past, maybe we got easy money because there were no competitors. Can you imagine, like if you live in a remote town, no specialist in whatever, in maybe construction or any kind of physical works, okay? You didn't have any competitor, then you could charge whatever you want, right? $30 an hour, $40 an hour, because you had no competitor. But with the coming of this kind of international, suddenly the wages decline, because there's more competition. Suddenly this kind of wage has declined to like $25 or $20. Right? You can imagine, right? I don't know, university professors, for example, university professors, in the past when we didn't have any competitors, we get more money, relatively more money in the past. Finance professors in the past could earn like 250,000, 300, but nowadays with a lot of talents, a lot of internationals in the United States, the starting salary had been more moderate, maybe 150, In some universities, only 120. Okay, so some groups will complain about it, right? Because the lowering or the lower wages because of competitors or competition. Also, environmental problem, some groups will complain, right? The ESG, we call it ESG, environmental, social, and governance, matters. We are going to Vietnam, right, to make shoes, like for Nike. We're going to China to make iPad, and everything. Some groups will complain about the environmental impacts, right? The waste management, the what else? Working environment, right? Working conditions here. Maybe we go there and the regulation is not really strict, so you could hire minors, maybe 15-year-old boy could be hired in certain countries, something that you cannot do at home. But when you go there, the regulation says, okay, you could hire 15-year-old children up to like certain percent or something. We don't know. National sovereignty. What about the chips, for example? The chip makers don't go to developing countries to make chips. Why? Because chips are so powerful, right? So we make in domestic production, usually in developed countries. So we are concerned about what national sovereignty, the technologies, the what else? The people as well. Right? By having more and more, diverse groups of people, the positive side, we have the diversity there, more diverse. But national sovereignty. So we are, for example, if you have, can you imagine like if two countries are making a joint venture? Like the Chinese firm and the US firm. Of course, in terms of business, you work together, you are friends, you are in the family in the sense that you are working for the same effort, right, the same joint venture. But in terms of national sovereignty, somehow, maybe nowadays to a less extent, you still have some concern about it, right? Because we have some competing nation politically in the joint venture. And also, what about this one? Extreme poverty in the world's poorest nations. So the question is, has globalization decreased, the poverty? Has globalization alleviated the poverty in poor countries? Something debatable, something to be, concerned about. Any questions or comments from you maybe about this one, the debate? Any comment, maybe debate, or maybe you can add to whatever the debate discussion point about the debate, maybe what else? Or let me randomly call Mathis, maybe Mathis, any additional thing about the negative side of globalization, maybe?
Well, I'd like to say something. I think that it's like for everything, there's cons and pros. And so
Sure.
it's all about balance. So the people that are in extreme groups, I think that they don't actually understand that it's for anything like action, and then there's going to be a consequence always. So that's why I think on this one, there's always going to be a debate.
Can you mention
Like
maybe one other debate point, maybe the negative side of globalization? Like we have seen the jobs, the wages, the environmental problem, working conditions, national sovereignty. Maybe any other things that you could observe?
Well, culture, like the fact that we share now a lot of aspects in culture, and some of them merge together and some of them are lost. I saw in another class that some like smaller cultures, subculture, get kind of lost in that globalization. So that would be that's a downside.
Right.
That's it.
So the because of the globalized world, we don't see maybe certain culture is no declining and fading away. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, even about this point is quite interesting, right? Because in many countries, because of the the economic interest and also the scientific interest, we have become more and more, how to say, like more uniform. I think maybe China, you could imagine my statement better, right? Because in China you have many types of people, right? You have the big country there, People's Republic of China, but you have many, I don't know, the southern people, the middle people, the northern and something. But you notice for you who are from China, do you notice that the language has become like more and more unified into the national language?
I definitely felt that because like prefers to use more standardized language and all the dialects flattening out. Yeah, that's definitely happening.
That happens everywhere, you know. In other countries, that happens because of the economic interest, because we want to be like speaking in the same language, so to make money quickly. Yes. And also scientific interest, because you're conducting research, you publish your research in that language, right, the national language. So other cultures will somehow fade away, the languages as well. I think you feel it, right? You feel it, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. More and more young people in China only can speak Mandarin. Yeah.
Right.
They forget their local culture. Yeah.
Right. I think that's natural. That happens everywhere, not only in China. But this is just to prove.
It is a trend, I think. Yeah.
The trend, yes. Yeah, it happens also in, I guess, in other parts of the world. Let me go to Leah.
Yes, sorry. Yes, about what people say about culture. Yes, I agree, but I think it's just a rules or a way of functioning. Like you have to, for example, in South Korea, if the teacher couldn't speak English, it should be impossible for a European like me to go to South Korea because our language is very specific to your country. And in France, I live in France, like not a lot of people like learn Korean. So I think it's nice to have like this international language, English, to talk with people from abroad. And I would like to say something about poverty, as you wanted someone to talk about it. I think there's two kind of cons about that. Is that so? As you said, the company now produce abroad and like play with laws and things like that to have a cheaper workforce. For example, when the clothes like are produced in Bangladesh, things like that, it's because it's very it's really not very expensive. And also this way of functioning of production have also impact in our country. For example, in France, before we had many factorings like some district with a lot of work, a lot of factoring. And now I know because my grandparents live in a place like that. And now it's like a ghost town almost because all the factories are abroad, and now it has created some unemployment. So it's impacting also our country, this fact.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. I think it's so true. I mean, many of us, I think, are seeing that, that possibility as well. Right? They, used to be producing domestically, but now because they go somewhere, unemployment has been higher, right? In maybe temporarily. It's hard to say. That's why it's the debate point, right? Because we expect that, with globalization, with the technology, nowadays we are talking about the artificial intelligence, the supercomputing, big data analytics, and something like that. We are saying that, look, we might lose some jobs, especially the middle management job, but with the technology and the globalization, we might be able to find like blue oceans, some other blue oceans. We call it blue oceans like opportunity somewhere else. But like it's easier said than done, right? Because if you say something is so easy, like we are saying this in the class, but if you're really living on it, right? It will be quite painful to lose something for now, and you have to look for something else. Right? So you have to find another opportunity because you're losing the job, you're losing the the working condition that has been so so familiar and so convenient to us for a long time, but we are losing them because of this kind of technology and also globalization. Yeah, thank you, Leah. I think it happens to all of us somehow. Matthew?
Yes, I just wanted to add that actually maybe thanks to globalization, it's possible today to have the opportunity to buy like some different products at a really low price. And even if it impacts jobs because it's like something obviously, right? I mean, maybe the real problem is that people want to today buy some products or some services with the lowest price as possible. And it obviously impacts the way that people want to work and also the politics in companies today.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, it will affect all kinds of, office situation and everything. Yeah. Again, with globalization, actually we expect more benefits than the drawbacks, or the disadvantages of globalization. But somehow everything has again the positive side and the negative side, costs and benefits as always. We just have to minimize the drawbacks, the negative sides of the globalization. But of course, they are real things, right? We are seeing this also. That's why there will be always a debate about globalization. What about anti-globalization protests? Quite interesting. You see, like, for example, in '99, this happened somewhere in Seattle. So many protesters went to the streets in Seattle. Well, it happens everywhere, I guess. Anti-globalization protesters, and they believe that, see this point here, globalization has detrimental effects on living standards, wage rates, and environment. See, people will always complain because you have been enjoying this kind of situation for a long time, very convenient, very comfortable as well to you. But suddenly things change because of globalization. Like what I think Leah said, your grandparents, they had a factory, or they're working for a factory like this, and suddenly the factory is gone because of international production, so they go somewhere else to produce. So we are losing the job, and also even with the existing factories or companies, maybe they'll pay less because of competition, right? Because of international talents coming in. Now you say university graduates, for example, if you graduate from, I don't know, from a certain country, let's say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would get a job within like 6 months, even 6 months before graduation, because there were not many university graduates at that time. So even 6 months before graduation, some companies were, would already go to your campus or your university to recruit. But nowadays, what's happening? It's not that easy anymore. Even for university graduates, even you graduate from relatively good universities, you still have to compete nowadays, right, with all graduates from all over the world. Right? For example, you are from France, right? You compete with not only from European Union graduates, but also from the United States, from Mexico, right? From North Europe, from Asia as well. So it's getting more and more competitive. The wage rates will be affected as well. So any kind of complaints will happen for sure. And also, what about this one? Oh, we talked about this, right? Very interesting one, right? Diversity of human cultures. Because of globalization, again, this have faded away somehow. in many countries. So we have become more and more globalized, more unified. So I would guess it would be less and less interesting nowadays for new generation to learn other languages other than your own language and English. Right? I think that's the trend. For example, if you are French, right? Of course you speak your own Français and then Anglais, right? Only two. Maybe you're less and less interested in learning Korean or Chinese, right? Not like it was in the past. Right? During my generation, we still love to learn. For example, I had to learn like Français in the past. Still, still quite attractive, to learn other languages. But nowadays we're saying, okay, in international context, we only need like English and maybe your regional language. For example, if you're from Asia, maybe it's quite beneficial for you to speak 普通话, the Mandarin. Maybe, right? If you're from Asia. But if you're from Europe, you don't feel the attractiveness anymore to learn the Chinese language, right? But English, right? English is the predominant business language if you deal with, for example, China or Asian countries. So it has become like somehow more uniform, more globalized nowadays. And this kind of diversity of human cultures and languages have become less and less attractive because of this kind of international trade. And Leah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted just to say something about Korea, and I think it become more and more famous in France and in Europe to learn Korean, in fact. But it depends of the
nice.
what we call the soft power of the country, and Korean with K-pop music and dramas and things like that become more and more. But it's really something because 10 years ago, very few people learned this language, and now there are more like option. You can choose Korean at school. You can go to Korea, and I think it's very linked to the soft power of the country, like the globalization of the culture, and it's something good for Korea. And I'm in Seoul for 2 weeks now, and there are so many French people here. that's funny. So yes.
Yeah, good for you. That's a good point. I just know that. So I think my conjecture was maybe not entirely true, okay? Because I conjecture that nowadays, because of the business, it would be less interesting to learn other languages other than English, because we are making money by using English in the international arena. But from what you said, it's quite good. I think good for friendship, good for world understanding as well, because many people are interested in, for example, in this case, like Korea, because of the drama, the K-pop. Yeah, it's quite a good one. Victoria, you want to say something?
Yes, I think no, it's not only interesting to learn another language to make friends and everything, because when you learn a language, then you learn about like the whole culture. And also when you actually know the language of the person you have in front of you, you can do better business. So I think it's really an effort to make when you want to do, like, when you're really serious about that. It always helps, like it's always a plus.
Yeah, I agree with you, Victoria, right. But I don't know, you can learn all the language or you're very strong at that.
No.
What I mean, but I think you may be French, so you could agree with me. But now, for example, Korean, more people learn Korean because they are more interesting about the culture, and because Korean culture is increasing. It become more and more famous in Europe and maybe USA. So that's it's also linked to business and the way the culture are spreading in the world.
Yeah, it's really true. But I was really only talking about like the business side of it. Like it's of course you cannot learn every languages, but if you want to do a business with like a precise country, then you should make an effort. That's my point, actually.
Thank you, Victoria. I think that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that it's going to be better all the way around for you. That's how you become actually successful when you force yourself.
Right.
That's it.
Thank you, Victoria. I think that's so true. It's one package. Very good point. I mean, you learn the language, so you understand the culture, also the business style as well, and everything. That's so true. Good to hear from you. Good to reflect on that as well. So it's not only the language. That's what you're saying, right? Language means what? The whole package there. Have the culture, then the maybe the business, business style, the communication style as well. That's very good one. Good point. I mean, Korea, I know it's very interesting because I think among the Asian languages and cultures, the Korean language is like how to say, like it's like singing, right? More outspoken, I think, than the similar Asian languages. Maybe I'm wrong as well, but that's what I noticed. Whenever you see the Korean movies or everything, when you see how they speak, right, it's more expressive. It's like more like singing or something. It's quite interesting one. Yeah, good for you to go to Korea to experience a life there. Maybe someday you have your businesses there as well. Globalization, jobs, and income. I think we saw this one again. Always a debate. Again, the major purpose, one of the purposes of globalization is the betterment of the world, right? The betterment of other parts of the world, the less developed countries, for example, by giving more opportunities to enjoy, high quality products, also production facilities, technologies, and all other things that we could imagine. But of course, on the other hand, the complaints, the debate over the negative impacts of globalization, multinational corporations going there, like higher unemployment because of jobs being taken away, maybe living standards, environmental problems, I don't know, other issues like human trafficking, some complicated issues. So there's always a debate, right? So hopefully, with this kind of understanding about international trade, international business, you can be like better business people in the future. So when you go international, you have the MNCs, like the multinational corporations, you'll do better, right? Protecting the people, the environments, right? Doing more for the society there everywhere you go. I think that's the whole point. So we want to gain as much benefit from the globalization itself, but we want to minimize the how to say the drawbacks, the shortfalls of the globalization process. Globalization, labor policies, and the environment. I think we discussed this one. Of course, I'm not expert in the labor policies or the law or something, but you could imagine everywhere you go, you have different regulations, labor unions, labor regulations, also working standards. So we are adjusting, of course, everywhere we go. But I think the point to make here also that we have been seeing this discussion has been around the world. Like if you go somewhere with maybe less stringent regulations, what kind of standards you want to put, right? What kind of standards you want to use? Your home standards or the host standards? So for example, you come from a more developed country, okay? You have strong regulations there, labor protection, labor union, or something like that. But you go to another country for production, and that country has less stringent, more flexible, more relaxed policy, less stringent policy. So what kind of standards you will hold on to, right? That's I think the debate, right? Of course, according to if we talk about the textbook, the the proper conversation and all the politically correct conversation, then we say that we have to stick with the higher standard. So if your home country has a higher standard, wherever you go, you try to stick to the higher standard. But can you do it, right? Or are you willing to do it? That's an important question. Mathilde?
Yes, I would say that for me, when you go in another country, you have to be adapted. So I would say that maybe I will try personally to adapt myself and my way of working to the country where I am. But obviously, all depends about, for example, the kind of company you have. For example, if you sell some environmental products, for example, maybe you maybe prefer to keep some important values in a work. I mean, for example, if you sell some environmental clauses, maybe you should prefer to choose some fabrics with a certain kind of elements or from a certain kind of people, thanks to that you can just correspond to your own values. I mean, so, but for me, if a company chooses to go in a country, that's because they already have reflect about it. I mean, they already think about it, and they know that if they want to develop, for example, a factory in another country, that's because there are some advantages that they want to have. I mean, so yeah, for me, I will try to adapt myself.
Yeah, sure, Mathilde. I think we agree with that. You adapt, right? But again, the question beyond the adaptation is, if you have like different standards, right? For example, your home standard is higher than the host standard, then we always encourage this kind of company to stick to the higher standard. Right? But the question is, are you willing to do it? That's another question altogether. But at least we encourage, in the conversation on international trade and business, we always encourage people to stick with the higher standard. Of course, you go there, you adapt. For example, like in your case, from Europe, you go to Korea or you go to China, then you adapt, like how to do business there, how to communicate with the local business partners, your suppliers, your customers, your employees, you adapt there. But if you have a higher standard in France, when you go to another country, for example, maybe in Africa, for example, then your support, we encourage you to stick to the higher standard. So you will, you employ the same standards like you are in your home country when you go there. Easier said than done again. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me continue first. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Over national sovereignty, national sovereignty again, always an issue, especially if you have cooperation with another company, right? You have the international firms coming to your country, then somehow politically you need to protect the national sovereignty and interests as well. That's understandable, but how to do it elegantly without without hurting your economy, without hurting the international cooperation. That's, I think, the art, right? The political art of doing something, right? Like it's essentially what American companies are doing in China. Politically, you are competitors, but economically, you allow the American companies to come to China to build factories there, to transfer technologies and everything, because you will gain benefits as well from those policies and activities. Leah?
Yeah, and about that, it's true that in the European Union, it's an ongoing debate, like the fact that is the European Union good for a national sovereignty, and we have also in France our presidential campaign this year, and it's always a debate the politics have about the benefits, the economic benefits, about also immigration. They always talk about that, and things like that, because some political parties say that it creates too much interdependence between our country and the other in Europe, and it's very difficult to take decision. We are like 27 countries, and it's very difficult to harmonize the decision to take the same decision. So yeah, So it's always a debate in Europe, I think.
Well, I think it's always a debate everywhere regarding this kind of issue, right? National sovereignty and the the interest of the union, the interest of the member country, right? Also the economic interest as well. We don't want to lose the economic interest, but what about the national interest, national sovereignty, political differences? It's always always a big debate everywhere, I guess. Okay, and then the globalization and the world's poor. Again, I think we reiterate the point that yeah, we expect globalization to alleviate poverty, right? Everywhere in remote countries, in poor countries or less developed countries. Yeah, something that we hope to happen because, yeah, we could create a more peaceful world, more friendly world as well if many people and more people are prospering. Many countries are prospering. I think that's one of the ways or methods to to avoid extremism, by prosperity. We are not saying that prosperity could solve everything, but at least by prospering more, that we could create a more peaceful world, less extreme world everywhere, right? I think that's the one of the key issues. But again, has it reached or attained to the purpose? I think far from it, right? Still far from attaining, the major purpose of alleviating poverty. We still see a lot of poverty, and I think last semester, or I don't know, some time ago, I was talking to some Chinese students, okay, students from China, and I was asking about the gap, right? The gap between the rich and the poor. What is happening in your country and something like that. Yeah, not everyone agrees that globalization has decreased the gap between the rich and the poor. But maybe I can hear from you. What do you think in your countries with this kind of like international trade, globalization? Do you see that the gap between the rich and the poor has subsided significantly? Any comment? Alexandre?
I think we definitively see that globalization lead to individuals and firms to concentrate riches like money. So it has the gap has definitively increased. Like in China, for example, you see how some cities are very prosperous and others are not, and individuals are left behind. So I think in globalization, it's very easy for individuals also to be left behind. And also, for example, in the technological shift, some countries will be more adapted to adapt new technologies quicker. And it's like a snowball, like they will then concentrate faster the money, and other countries will be left more and more behind, maybe.
Thank you, Alexandre. I think that's really undesired results of globalization. Yeah, it's so sad to know the fact, like maybe the gap between the rich and the poor. But actually, like the main purpose of this kind of globalization and also internationalization of business is that more and more people from everywhere in the world will have access to the technologies. You can imagine with with the mobile phones in everyone's hands, you could have access to any apps, any webs, any kind of information. I think that's the initial expectation. But of course, when the process is ongoing, that something happens, maybe not really a desirable direction. Let me go to Tom first.
I think actually the globalization in China, maybe it helps to reduce the gap between rich and the poor. For example, like Tesla, and they have their own factory in Shanghai, and maybe Google have some company in Suzhou, and it provide a lot of job opportunities to local people. And I think if people get their jobs, and they can use their ability to earn some money. So I think in some aspects, it will reduce the gap between the rich and poor. Yes, that's my idea. Yeah.
I think that's what we expect, right, Tom? That's the good news, if that is true. But like what Alex Song said, maybe some, certain aspects of globalization have made people more and more, individualized, more somehow selfish, maybe, so to speak, okay, quote unquote selfish.
Yes,
for example,
it has pros and cons. Yeah.
Right, pros and cons as always. Like university, for example, like in the past, like I'm sure in Europe, like you had like the same, I don't know, like the tuition and the fees, right? It was quite uniform, I think, in the past. So every year I'm also teaching in Germany. So I remember in 2007, okay, that was the first time that university, the place I was teaching, was charging like 500 euros per semester. And there was a lot of complaint. 500 euros was quite mild, okay? I'm sure in China it's much more expensive. In the United States, it's unheard of. I never hear any university only charging $500 per semester. But at the time, I remember the university in Germany, I was teaching at, was charging the first time, okay, was charging 500 euros. And many students were angry because previously it was like, I think almost free, I guess. But you see, like with this kind of globalization, we want to increase the quality, the standard, and some universities have become like really super, super expensive, like super favorite as well. So we say like some students from like more able, more advantageous advantageous families, they could go to such universities, they could pay for it, and there is a possibility that when they graduate, they will get like stronger job offers, like from stronger companies or more networks, potential business partners in the future who are more potential. You understand what I'm saying, right? So that could create some, some gap as well, right? Because we are competing, to create this kind of learning centers, universities as well, and cities, like what you said, cities. Maybe in certain cities, it have become like very prosperous. In other cities or other towns, it's like left behind, lower level universities. So yeah, so hard to say, but yeah, something like that happened.
Okay, thank you for Alex Song. Yeah.
I think you can really see it in America. Like it's a little bit the leader country in the globalization, but it is also politically so divided, and it shows how people are left behind in the globalization. You see that it's concentrated in areas like the Rust Belt. But maybe it's because we haven't reached the real globalization yet. So maybe it's a period of shift.
Yeah, it could be also, I mean, the scale of globalization, maybe it's like halfway or maybe 75%. There could be two as well. But you're right. I mean, in every country, we have certain parts that are not really, it seems that they are not really gaining a lot from this kind of internationalization or globalization. yeah, that happens everywhere, even in the United States. I mean, we talk about high tech, the cashless society or cardless society. Maybe you will see like cities like New York or Chicago or Seattle, or yeah, the Los Angeles, San Francisco, some cities like that. But in some other towns, maybe we don't really see it yet. I have yet to really see this kind of internationalization. Yeah, that's so true as well. But again, we hope that the gap between the rich and the poor will decline, continuously decline. That would be good for the world, for every country as well. But again, somehow there's an observation that actually the gap is not really declining fast, okay, because of the creation of another other sources of gap, like universities, quality of universities and corporations and everything else. Managing the global marketplace, we talk about this. If you're an international manager, international executive, or business person, then you need to adapt. Yeah, you need to read the circumstances everywhere you go. You conduct yourself, right, according to the business culture there, the human culture, and also the business culture in that area. I think it's quite clear. And yeah, I think that's about globalization, the introduction to globalization. It's quite a very interesting one. Even the first chapter is interesting enough, right, for all of us. See a lot of opinions, right, from you. Really nice one. And we almost spent 3 hours today. Okay, that's